Your one click on the subscribe button makes a huge difference. Thank you for your kind support.
In the bone-chilling horror film, Until Dawn, we follow a group of friends caught in a terrifying nightmare that blends psychological horror with supernatural elements. The story centers on Clover Paul, a young woman still deeply affected by the mysterious disappearance of her sister Melanie a year ago. Hoping to find closure or perhaps even answers, Clover agrees to join her friends Max, Megan, Nina, and Abe on a trip to Glower Valley, the remote location where Melanie was last seen. What begins as a journey for answers quickly descends into a horrifying ordeal that forces them to confront not just external threats, but their own deepest fears and traumas. As the film opens, we see the friends driving to Glower Valley. Through their conversations, we learn about Clover's fragile mental state. She has attempted suicide twice in the past year following her sister's disappearance. There's clear tension within the group, particularly between Clover and her ex-boyfriend Max, who broke up with her supposedly to spare her from getting hurt. We also discover that while the friends presented this trip to Clover as just getting out of town, they're actually retracing Melanie's final journey before she vanished. During their drive, they stop at a gas station where Clover has an unsettling interaction with the attendant. This older man seems to recognize her, cryptically mentioning that many people come asking if he's seen someone. He warns them about Glower Valley, creating an ominous atmosphere around their destination. Despite this warning, the group continues their journey until they encounter a bizarre phenomenon, a wall of water in the middle of the road that Max calls a water wall. Unable to drive through it, they seek shelter in a nearby building. Inside what appears to be an abandoned visitor center, they make a disturbing discovery, a wall of missing person posters that includes one for Melanie. Strangely, Melanie's poster lacks basic information like date of birth or contact details. While exploring this eerie place, Clover becomes convinced she heard Melanie calling to her from outside. Before they can process this, they realize their car has disappeared, seemingly driven away by someone unknown. Stranded in this strange location with no cell service, the group finds themselves truly isolated. As night falls, terrifying events begin to unfold. While investigating the building, Megan disappears. When the others search for her, they encounter a horrifying entity, a masked killer who brutally murders Abe. But in a shocking twist, the friends suddenly find themselves back at the gas station as if nothing had happened, almost like time has reset. They're confused and disoriented, with only vague memories of what occurred. This pattern repeats as the friends realize they're caught in some kind of time loop where they keep dying and then resetting, to try again. With each cycle, they discover new aspects of their nightmare. They find a guest book where they must sign their names, and they notice that with each reset, more signatures appear under their names, suggesting they've been through this cycle multiple times already without clear memories of previous attempts. During one of these cycles, they learn about the history of Glower Valley. 20 years ago, a catastrophic mining disaster occurred, resulting in the deaths of over 1,100 people. The miners had dug too deep, causing much of the town to collapse into the earth. A trauma specialist named Dr. Alan Hill was brought in to work with survivors. This explains the unusual architecture of the building they're in. It has windows that appear to be underground because they're in what remains of a town mostly swallowed by the earth. As they continue to die and reset, they begin to understand the rules of their predicament. They have a limited number of tries, represented by the signatures in the book, before they permanently become part of the night. They also discover that different people might have different numbers of chances. Some may turn sooner than others. This realization comes when they notice Megan is missing from their group and isn't mentioned in the book anymore, suggesting she has already been taken by whatever force controls this place. During one cycle, they encounter a strange man who confirms their suspicions. He tells them, "Either survive the night or become a part of it," and clarifies that someone always has to die for the others to escape. This creates moral dilemmas within the group as they debate whether sacrificing one person to save the rest is acceptable. The friends attempt various strategies to escape. They try to outrun the night, to find Dr. Hill, who they believe holds answers, and even considered the possibility of sacrificing one of their own. Throughout these attempts, they faced different manifestations of horror: a masked killer, a witch-like creature, spontaneous combustion, and other terrors. In one particularly disturbing discovery, one of them finds an inhuman growth on their body, suggesting they're physically transforming into something monstrous. As their number of tries dwindles and these transformations begin to affect them, the tension and desperation increase. In one attempt, Nina and Abe decide to sacrifice themselves so the others might have a chance to escape. This selfless act allows Max and Clover to continue their search for answers. Eventually, Clover manages to confront Dr. Hill alone. In this pivotal scene, Hill reveals the truth behind their nightmare. He explains that he has been studying fear and trauma, using Glower Valley as a laboratory of sorts. The place, with its tragic history, combined with people like Clover who carry their own deep traumas, creates what he calls a perfect environment where trauma becomes terror. Hill has been deliberately orchestrating their experiences, studying how their fears manifest. Hill explains that each monster they've encountered represents a different aspect of Clover's psyche. The masked killer embodies feelings of powerlessness, the witch personifies depression, and the spontaneous combustion reflects her self-destructive tendencies. He's been using Clover as an engine to drive the horrors they've all experienced, much as he did with Melanie and others before her. In the final confrontation, Clover realizes that breaking the cycle means confronting not just Hill but her own fears. Rather than running from death, as she has been doing, she must face it directly. In a moment of clarity and courage, she turns the tables on Hill, declaring that this time he will be the one to die. What follows is an intense struggle where Clover, empowered by her newfound understanding, fights back against Hill and the manifestations of her own fears. The film ends with Clover and the surviving friends escaping Glower Valley as dawn finally breaks, suggesting they've survived the night and broken the curse. However, there's an ambiguity to the ending that leaves viewers wondering if they've truly escaped, or if they're just in another iteration of the cycle. Until Dawn works on multiple levels, functioning both as a straightforward horror story and as a deeper allegory about grief, trauma, and the process of healing. The time loop device serves as a metaphor for how trauma can keep us stuck, reliving our worst experiences until we find a way to process and move beyond them. Clover's journey throughout the film mirrors the stages of grief and recovery. At the beginning, she's stuck in her pain over her sister's disappearance, unable to move forward. The repeated cycles of death and rebirth represent her attempts to cope with this loss, each time trying different strategies but ultimately failing until she confronts the root cause of her suffering. Dr. Hill, as the manipulative figure exploiting her trauma, represents how our unprocessed pain can be used against us, either by others or by our own minds. The various monsters and threats the friends encounter symbolize different aspects of psychological distress. The masked killer represents external threats and helplessness. The witch embodies depression and hopelessness. The spontaneous combustion reflects self-destructive impulses. And the physical transformations show how unresolved trauma can change us fundamentally if left unchecked. By facing and overcoming these manifestations, Clover begins the process of reclaiming her agency and healing. The setting of Glower Valley itself is significant, a place literally swallowed by tragedy, where the boundary between the surface world and what lies beneath has collapsed. This mirrors the psychological state of someone dealing with trauma, where the barriers between conscious thought and subconscious fears become permeable, allowing buried emotions to emerge unexpectedly. The film also explores the theme of friendship and loyalty in the face of extreme circumstances. As the friends face death repeatedly, their relationships are tested. Some choose selflessness, sacrificing themselves for others, while others give in to fear and self-preservation. These choices reveal their true characters and the strength of their bonds. The fact that some friends are willing to die so others might live reflects the healing power of community and connection in overcoming trauma. The rule that someone always has to die for others to escape serves as a metaphor for how moving forward sometimes requires letting go of not just people, but also of versions of ourselves, of guilt, or of the past. Clover ultimately realizes that to truly escape, she must let go of her attempts to save her sister and accept that Melanie is truly gone. This acceptance doesn't mean forgetting but rather integrating the loss into her life in a way that allows her to continue living. The mysterious figure of Dr. Hill represents those who exploit others' suffering for their own purposes. As a trauma specialist who creates more trauma rather than healing it, he embodies the dangers of approaching psychological pain with the wrong intentions. His defeat at Clover's hands symbolizes her rejection of unhealthy coping mechanisms and manipulative influences in favor of genuine healing. The cyclical nature of the nightmares also reflects how trauma can feel inescapable, with victims often feeling like they're reliving their worst experiences over and over. Each reset gives the characters another chance, just as therapy and healing are processes that often require multiple attempts before breakthrough occurs. The limited number of tries represented by the signatures in the book creates urgency, suggesting that there's a point where trauma, if left unaddressed, can permanently alter who we are, the point at which we become part of the night. The film's visual language supports these themes. The darkness that constantly threatens to engulf the characters represents depression and unprocessed grief, while the brief moments of light symbolize hope and clarity. The transformations the characters undergo visually represent how trauma can change us if we don't find healthy ways to process it. The final dawn that allows their escape represents the hope that comes with healing and moving forward. The character of Melanie, though mostly absent, drives much of the plot. Her disappearance is the wound around which Clover's life has organized itself. Throughout the film, Clover must confront the possibility that her sister is truly gone, shifting from denial and desperate searching to acceptance and honoring her memory. This journey mirrors the real experience of grieving a loss without closure. One particularly poignant aspect of the film is the revelation that Melanie chose to leave town on her own, pursuing a new life elsewhere. This adds another layer to Clover's grief. Not only did she lose her sister, but she must also process the fact that Melanie chose to leave her behind. This speaks to the complex emotions that can accompany abandonment, and how we sometimes struggle to accept others' choices, especially when they cause us pain. The ending of Until Dawn offers a cautiously hopeful message about recovery from trauma. While the film acknowledges the difficult and often terrifying nature of confronting our deepest fears, it suggests that doing so is the only path to genuine freedom. Clover's final triumph comes not from escaping her fears but from turning to face them directly, taking control of her narrative rather than remaining a victim. However, the ambiguity of the ending reminds us that healing is rarely complete or absolute. The question of whether they've truly escaped or are just in another iteration of the cycle parallels how recovery often feels. We may overcome one challenge only to find others awaiting us. The important thing is that Clover has developed the tools and courage to face whatever comes next. In its exploration of time loops and psychological horror, Until Dawn also raises interesting questions about free will versus determinism. Are we doomed to repeat our patterns, or can we break free from them? The film suggests that while our past traumas and experiences shape us, they don't have to define us. Through conscious effort and courage, we can break destructive cycles and forge new paths. The film also touches on the idea of collective trauma. The mining disaster affected an entire community, just as personal tragedies can ripple outward to affect families and friend groups. The friends in the story are all, in different ways, impacted by what happened to Melanie. This shows how trauma is rarely contained to just one person. It creates waves that touch everyone connected to the person suffering. An interesting aspect of the film's structure is how it plays with memory and perception. Each time the characters reset, they retain only fragments of what happened in previous cycles. This mirrors how trauma can affect memory. Sometimes we repress painful experiences, only to have fragments emerge later. It also speaks to how we sometimes need to revisit painful memories multiple times before we can fully process them. The character of Max represents how our attempts to protect others, and ourselves, from pain can sometimes cause more harm. He broke up with Clover supposedly to spare her from getting hurt, but this decision likely added to her isolation and suffering. His journey in the film is about learning that running from difficult emotions doesn't make them disappear. It often makes them stronger. Nina and Abe's decision to sacrifice themselves shows the redemptive power of selflessness. In choosing to die so others might live, they transcend their fear and find meaning in their final moments. This suggests that even in our darkest times, the choices we make matter and can serve as powerful expressions of our humanity. Until Dawn also explores how our perception of threat can be distorted by trauma. For Clover, everything becomes potentially dangerous because her worldview has been colored by loss and fear. This is why the horrors take so many different forms. Her mind is constantly scanning for danger, turning even mundane things into potential threats. Her journey involves learning to distinguish between real dangers and those created or amplified by her traumatized mind. The film's use of different horror archetypes, the slasher, the witch, body horror, serves not just as entertainment but as a way to explore different facets of fear. The slasher represents immediate, tangible threats from others. The witch represents more nebulous fears like depression or societal judgment, and the body horror elements represent our fears about loss of control over ourselves and our identities. By confronting all these types, Clover is essentially facing the full spectrum of human fear. Dr. Hill's role as both a trauma specialist and the orchestrator of trauma creates a powerful commentary on how institutions meant to help can sometimes harm. His character might represent how the mental health system, despite good intentions, can sometimes fail those it aims to help or even exploit their vulnerability. His defeat suggests that healing sometimes requires rejecting harmful help in favor of finding our own path to recovery. In conclusion, Until Dawn uses the framework of horror to explore profound questions about grief, trauma, recovery, and the human capacity for both cruelty and compassion. Through Clover's journey from victim to survivor to victor, the film offers a compelling narrative about the possibility of overcoming even the most profound suffering and finding a way forward. The dawn that finally arrives doesn't erase what came before, but it does offer the promise of a new day and the chance to build something meaningful from the ruins of tragedy. For viewers who have experienced trauma, the film may resonate on a deeply personal level, offering both a reflection of their struggles and a hopeful message about resilience. For others, it provides insight into the experience of psychological suffering and recovery, wrapped in the accessible package of a supernatural horror story. Either way, Until Dawn leaves its audience with much to consider about the nature of fear, the process of healing, and the possibility of dawn after even the darkest night.